I want to animate. And I've recently just started. Nothing major, but I'm dipping my toes in the proverbial pool. Let's jump right in and take a look at what are my first few animations. My first animation is a falling blob. It's supposed to be the start of a follower notification for Twitch, and you know what? For my very first animation, aside from the nugget running around the screen one, it's alright. It's pretty nice and springy, I don't mind it. And on to the next one. I went from a falling blob to a jumping blob. This one obviously isn't completed, it's just the wireframes, for lack of a better term. And yeah, it seems like the movement is getting conveyed. There aren't any droplets on the way back just because I couldn't be bothered to go back to the initial few frames and get those droplets looping correctly, because I'd have to finish those droplets in the first couple of frames and yeah, too much effort. So I didn't do that. But yeah, it's alright, those simple shapes. Then I move on to my first attempt at a walk cycle, which I did with a stick figure animation. Now, I'm pretty happy with the legs on this one. The legs are pretty good, but the arms aren't, to put it lightly. And I think I've got the bobbing kind of wrong. There's something about the arms, it might be because the body isn't wide enough, so the behind arm doesn't disappear, so it looks kind of looks a bit two-dimensional. But, you know, my first attempt at a walk cycle. Next, I did another walk cycle, this time with a more solid human, and I was trying to make it so it looked like he was holding something and just swinging one arm, and while the legs look pretty good again, the arm, I try to use some smear frames, and it just looks a bit violent, like a lot more violent than it was meant to look. So, yeah, you know, practice. Finally, well, not finally, actually. Why did I say finally? First, I tried my first lip sync. So if I sync it up correctly, I'll try and sync. I'm Blobbit. I'm Blobbit. I'm Blobbit. Yeah, I was just playing around with lip syncing because I know that for future projects, lip syncing is a must. Now, for another incomplete one, this one I didn't finish animating, but I was trying to do a sort of slingshot. And it's not bad, to be honest. I could have done far worse. Definitely needed some work moving in a 3D space. So you get the pullback and then the string disappears. And the smear frames on this one aren't too bad, but it definitely doesn't retain its shape. But the idea is there. Next, this one was just kind of the keyframes. I only did one stream of this one, but it is a leap and a face plant. So I've got some of the key poses, but I haven't done any of the in-betweens. The arms go a bit funky, and I have no idea how to draw that in-between for that final face plant. Then second last one, is this blob impact that I did this week, the week that I'm recording it. So it's a zoom, turn around, impact. I'm not happy with the impact frames, but everything else I'm pretty satisfied with. Maybe I could speed it up a little bit. And then one that I literally did this morning, because I'm recording this on a Wednesday, because I will be away for Easter, is the start of a cat walk cycle. It needs work. Doing 4 legs is harder than 2 legs, and cat legs aren't like human legs. So if I'm gonna get a new nugget walking around animation, that's definitely something to work on. Alright, that's enough talking about my animations. As a general note, I've been animating on 2s, which means every 2 frames is a new image. Also animating on 24 frames per second speed, or in my case, 12 frames per second. So, after reviewing all of those animations, what are my immediate concerns? My 2 human walk cycles show that I've got a bit of an issue with something. I don't know what word to use. It's too simple to say the arms and too broad to say the movement. One was too ill-defined and weak, the stick figure one, while the other one, like I said, it seemed too harsh unintentionally, like very much like I am marching. So I need to find a medium between those 2 movements. The next thing I hope will come with some experience is animation in the 3D space. The incomplete slingshot is the only attempt I've had at it so far, but I did think it did enough to convey the point, but it is very janky, and I know animating in 3D space, there's a term for it in the 12 Principles of Animation, but I can't remember it right now. Otherwise, for my first less than 10 animations, it's a good start. So, what next? Well, as I mentioned last video, I want to animate something that will really stretch the limits of my current abilities or lack thereof. I want to create an animated short based on the audio of something that I like. These sorts of things are some of my favorite bites of content on YouTube. Stuff like the Game Grumps animated, Drawfee animated, Roll20 animated, so on and so forth. I love them all. I don't currently have an audio clip in mind though, so I suppose jumping into a plan, first step is to find an audio clip that I want to animate. The best sort of animated clips are the ones where the audio lends itself to expansion. Stuff like stories about things, or if it's audio from a gameplay video, something where the on-screen action doesn't reflect the tone of the commentary. The Game Grumps Purple Plant Saga is one of my favorite examples of both of those things in a single video. Once I found a piece of audio that I like, it's time to plan out the animation, which I don't really know how to do. I mean, at least in a formal sense. With my animations so far, I do a rough sketch estimation of how I want it to look before I start the final version. While the first pass, so to speak, doesn't take as long as the final version, I am still essentially animating the entire thing twice. That may work for something that's less than 40 frames, especially with my low level of quality, but if I'm animating something that would be around a minute long, 12 frames a second, I'll stick to animating on 2s for now, that is 60 times 12, 720 frames long. Well, if I animate that twice, I don't think I'd be able to manage over 1,000 frames of drawing. So I need to plan my animations more efficiently, so I'm going to try something different. Shots, poses, and movements. Once again, I'm showing my lack of animation vernacular since I am a jump in and see what works kind of learner after all. Shots, to me, are essentially camera angles. A new scene is when the camera's position changes completely. If shot 1 is a flat front shot of 2 people talking, the next section is an overhead angle of the same 2 people talking, then I count the camera has now been moved to a new position, so it's a new shot. Maybe another way of thinking about it is by backgrounds. If the background changes suddenly, then it's a new shot. This doesn't really include transitions between shots though, whether it's a snap zoom, a hard cut, and so on, so maybe transitions can be their own thing. Then poses. This is a bit easier. What are the major poses of the character in the shot? Are they sitting, then standing? Are the hands in their pockets, then in the air? Each of these positions are a pose. A pose can be large and small. The previous 2 examples are large poses, but if you think of a conductor of an orchestra, each of the held positions of the arm would be a separate pose. I'll see if I can find a royalty-free clip of one, or I'll draw a stick figure of it if I can't. What I'll also need to do is, when showing these poses, is to cut out only the part that has changed the pose. Using the conductor example, I don't want to spend time reanimating the entire person, I just want to change the arms. You'd see this a lot with cell animation. Thankfully with digital animation, I should be able to just put the moving part on a separate layer and just duplicate the unmoving layer. Finally, movements. Unlike what I'm doing now, where I just animate the whole movement in the planning frames, I'm going to placeholder the movement. For example, I would use arrows and written text in order to indicate the type of movement that should be happening between the 2 pose frames. It should be said, however, that this method, which will almost certainly be refined and improved as I continue to animate, is a very me method, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Sure, it may work for me for the time being, but I should take at least some time to learn the proper animation vernacular for future animations. The type of stuff, if that, heaven forbid, would allow me to collaborate with other animators if necessary. At the end of all the rough sketches, that's when I'll start on the final product. Except not really. You see, there's a step I've intentionally left out. Character design. For an animated short, they don't have to be detailed, but I still need to know what I'm going to make the characters of the short look like. I need to know how they're going to be in motion. This is one of the 12 principles of animation I referenced in my very first animation video. Appeal. I will taper that back though and repeat myself that I am an amateur artist and even more beginner animator. So I'll be aiming, at least for this first animated short, because I'm sure I'll want to make more after this one, for a conceptually appealing character design, where the ideas behind the appeal principle are present, though the technical skill required to pull it off isn't quite there yet. Remember the mantra, completion, not perfection. Once I've got the characters animating, there's a bit more I'll have to do, something that I dread. Backgrounds. Backgrounds are a particular weakness of mine. Most of my drawings exist in a void, and one of my few drawings that I did do a background for just felt a bit flat. I'm not sure how to do them, or more accurately, I don't think I'm particularly good at merging the image's focus with the background without it appearing as though the focus is just pasted on top of a separate image. Which, I mean, I guess they technically are if you count the different layers of an image as separate drawings, but the point still stands. The focus of an image needs to look as though it belongs in the background, not that it's separate from it. I don't really have a plan for that, but it's just something to keep in mind. Well, the wireframes of the animation, mapping out the scenes, poses and movement, designing the characters and creating the backgrounds, throwing it all together and creating an animation. How long is this going to take me? Now, with the Easter holiday which I'm away for, I've had to finish this video earlier than usual since I'll be away for the long weekend, my engagement party, which is theoretically supposed to be soon but nothing is really set in stone for it, and the ever-present shadow of my wedding looming ever closer, I know that my time will be somewhat limited. I'll try and cover at least the start of those milestones, for example the character designing, on stream. Come check me out at twitch.tv/blobbertmcnugget, though there'll be plenty of off-stream work that needs to be done as well. I think it's reasonable to have the wireframe of the animation done by the end of June. This means the scene, pose, and movement mapping with the character design synced up to the audio of whatever clip I'm animating to. It's been a while since I've had a solid time-restricted goal, which is probably why things have been in such a state of stagnation recently, but I'm going to try and stick to it. I'll be more than happy to take any suggestions from all of you in the comments down below. Any clips that you love, any animators or animations that you admire. I personally am madly in love with Shuchiru's animations, though I don't have the skill nor comedic acumen to pull off his many wonderful expressions. And it's not just my bias that he animated the Welcome to My Parents' House music video either. Either way, thank you for joining me, and I hope you look forward to my first non-practice animation. After all, it's not I attempt new things, it's we attempt new things. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a fruitful day.